Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Let's get it started. Let's get it started in here. Yeah.
The views expressed by J. Michael McCoy are the views of the hosts and guests of Max World Live, and not necessarily the views of Webcast One Live, its staff, its management, the cleaning crew, Dave the electric guy, the guy who cleans the skywalk, the woman who brought in the cookies, the management staff of Hubble Real Estate, the parking lot attendant at Keck Parking, the wait staff over at Miss Kitty's, the coffee crew at Frederick's, the man in the street corner willing to work for food, Rob Spearman, Max Crabb, or anyone else of sound mind. Should you be offended, provoked, intimidated, shocked, confused, or just made to think independently, log on to maxworldlive.com right now. It's your voice we want to hear in Max World. And now, live from the palatial studios of Webcast One Live, your host, J. Michael McCoy.
All right, good afternoon. It's just a few weeks from the primaries here in the state of Iowa, and you must know that there are more than just two people running for governor. Jack Hatch, of course, makes all the noise on the Democratic side, and we'll talk about Jack in a minute. And then, of course, Governor Branstad, the seated governor? What's that? Seated? Current.
Well, the incumbent.
The incumbent, there you go, is Governor Terry Branstad going for his record sixth term. And that would be longer than any other governor has ever sat, I believe, in the country.
I believe you're right.
If he gets the sixth one. But there's somebody else, and his name is Tom Hoefling. Did I say that right? Mm-hmm. And Tom is from Calhoun County, and he's on the ballot. And Tom and I wanted to give you, the listener, an opportunity to understand that there is another choice. Yeah, maybe he doesn't have the budget to spend all the big ads, and he doesn't get in the news because he's not a developer or he's not the current governor. But Tom and I have always felt that every man and woman deserves a voice when it comes to being an elected official. So we welcome Tom to our studios today.
Gentlemen, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You bet. We're glad to have you.
We almost had Jonathan Narcisse on here last week.
Oh. I got zero feedback on that show. Jonathan Narcisse, and I love Jonathan, don't get me wrong, but he brought on a preacher.
I like the guy.
I did too. Randy Young, I believe his name was, and called out Jack Hatch as a racist and cited, what do we want to say? They weren't allegations. They were facts that he had said and done some racist things.
Well, called Akeo Samad, which they did not name, but that's who they were talking about, the N-word repeatedly in an angry tirade up on Capitol Hill, which is hardly a private setting.
Yeah.
So...
But I was really surprised I didn't get any feedback on that. So we'll just see what happens on that. So anyway, Tom, tell us a little bit about you. Where were you born and where's home?
Well, my family is all from Sac County, northwest Iowa, from a little town called Odebolt. My dad, when he came back from Korea, went down to work in the packing houses in South Omaha. So I was born in Omaha, raised in Carter Lake, Iowa, Climbing Hill, Iowa, Early, Iowa, and then back to Ralston, Nebraska.
Ralston,
yeah, that's where I spent most of my childhood. When I grew up, I ended up back in Iowa. I've spent most of my adult life back in northwest Iowa.
And married?
I'm married. I have 8 children and 2 beautiful granddaughters.
8?
I do.
Like 8 is not enough?
Yeah, I have 8. I actually have 2 with the Lord. And I also have a niece and nephew that I call my own. They lost 10 years ago, lost both their parents in one weekend. And,
wow.
So I have a daughter-in-law and a son-in-law. So we've got about 14 of them that we call our own.
And that's Thanksgiving.
Yeah, that is Thanksgiving when we can get them all together, of course.
If you got some seats open, Tom and I always have no problem crashing family events for good turkey and ham.
My wife's a good cook, so.
All right. And so what do you do for a living? What yeah.
I kind of come from a blue collar background over the years. I'd worked all kinds of jobs to keep body and soul together and a roof over the family's heads. But for the last 20 years, I've primarily been a political activist, and I do some consulting work along the way to make a little money here and there. But I'm not a great consultant. I never got rich at it because I'm more activist.
Yeah.
I worked very closely for many years with someone most of your listeners probably remember, and that's Dr. Alan Keyes.
Sure. I love Alan Keyes.
So
Got a picture taken with Alan Keyes.
Yeah.
So that's what
You
led me into national politics, and got me working on campaigns all over the country for a long time.
So you're a hired gun.
I have been at times.
Yeah. Consultant.
Usually the guy that people go to when they know it's someone who isn't out for the money, and they can't get any of the regular Republican hacks to handle people. So we'll come in and help, and if we don't get paid, they know that we're dedicated to the cause. So that's just the way it is.
Good. All right. So, well, you go ahead, Tom. You've always got a great list of questions for candidates.
Tom, you and I have not met up until now.
That's right.
You say that you've seen me on my commercial, but that's a one-way viewing. So I'm
Sure.
interested to hear what separates you. You just in your early intro, you appear to be a man with some spiritual moorings,
Absolutely.
which we very much appreciate on this show. Some convictions. You've got some background in politics. What is your platform? What doesn't sound like you're going to be trying to run to the left of Jack Hatch. So
no.
tell us where you're at and what motivates you to do this now.
Well, I'm definitely running to the right of Terry Branstad and Jack Hatch. My political philosophy is rooted in my Bible to start with. My understanding that our rights come from God, not from any man. That is the basis of the American political understanding. We hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. So the basis for my political philosophy are the principles of the Declaration of Independence and the understanding that government exists to protect the God-given unalienable individual rights of every person. And that includes the unborn as well, of course.
Well, and you won't get any argument there from Mac and myself.
Nope.
Tell us where you most... Okay, so Jack Hatch is clear off to the left trying to appease the special interest of the disparate party known as the Democrats. Where are you coming in, and how do you disassociate yourself and take issue with the current governor, Terry Branstad?
Well, the first issue that's out front, of course, with me, the restoration of equal protection for the unborn is at the forefront of my agenda politically, because I do not believe we can save this country unless we get back to that understanding of unalienable rights and equal protection for every person. In this particular campaign, of course, one of the forefront issues is Governor Branstad's continuing support for Common Core.
Okay, now hold on. You just jumped from one to another.
Right.
Let's cover the territory that you've laid out, the sanctity of life issue. Is Branstad disappointed you in some fashion on his zeal to try to defend unborn life?
On his best days, he's indifferent to the life issue, in my opinion. If you go back...
If you were in his position, what would you do on the life issue?
I would do everything within the power of that office to restore respect for the equal rights of the unborn. If you look at Terry Branstad's record since he first became governor in 1982, and you go all the way through his pro-life record, I sum it up as a big zero. And I can prove it. And the way I can prove it is to point to my representative, Tom Shaw's House File 138, which I helped write, actually. And what we did with that bill is we said, okay, what can we do to restore equal protection? By the way, the equal protection that is absolutely required by our constitutions, Article 1, Section 1 of the Iowa Constitution, the 5th and the 14th Amendments, and of course, as a Christian, by thou shalt not murder. There are no exceptions in any of those cases. Mm-hmm. So how do you restore equal protection for the unborn? We've killed in this state, since Roe, the equivalent of the population of the county that we're here in today, okay? Are we going to continue to do that or not? That's the question. Are we going to restore equal protection?
What would you propose to do at this point, given that you're dealing with a Democrat-controlled, Gronstal-led Iowa Senate? What would you do if you were the governor right now, Tom, that is different than what Branstad has done?
Well, I understand the obstruction that Gronstal... I want to come back because I didn't finish a very important point, but But I understand the obstruction that Gronstal and the Democrats represent, but I'm afraid that they're used as an excuse.
All right. So this is my question. It was my beginning question when we got into this. If you were governor, what would you do different than Branstad to try to restore the sanctity of life for the unborn?
Well, I want to finish real quick on House File 138 because I think the legislature should put our Iowa Code back in compliance with equal protection. House File 138 went straight to the murder code and rightly identified the child in the womb as a person. Okay, if you go back and read the Roe v. Wade opinion, Blackmun clearly said if the fetus is a person, of course they're protected by the 14th Amendment. So that's the first thing that Tom Shaw sought to do, was rightly identify the child in the womb as a person. Now, that wasn't enough, sadly. You also had to go in and scrub the Iowa Code of most of the legislation that's been passed by pro-lifers in this state for decades, because those code sections grant explicit permission to do abortions. Okay, that's not in compliance with equal protection. You got to get rid of it, which House File 138 did. Basically, you've got a lot of code sections in the Iowa Code right now that end with, and then you can kill the baby. Those have to go. So I would like to see the legislature come into compliance with their own oath to protect innocent life. Okay, the governor.
Don't disagree with that, but let's go back to the question. I mean, what could you do as governor that would make this situation better for people like everybody in this room that do appreciate the need to try to protect the innocent?
Well, you know, I'll quote that great philosopher Clint Eastwood, who said, a man's got to know his limitations, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I recognize the limitations of the governor. He can only do what he can do within his own sphere. When he raises his right hand and swears an oath to God himself to support and defend the Constitution, that should mean something. And the reason our country is in the mess it is because our elected officials have lost that understanding, okay? Our Constitution, our laws are only as good as the character of the men and women who are taking that oath. So, you know, how would I do it? Mm-hmm. I would do it in every single way that I could possibly find, using the best minds that I could find in this state to look over every state policy and say, are we enforcing the supreme law of our state and the supreme law of our land? And I would go directly after those things.
I mean, at this point, I'm not getting the specificity that I'm looking for, Tom. As running for governor and having this be a central plank issue, do you? I mean, other than just the answer you gave us, which was a rather nebulous answer, is there anything that you can think that Branstad specifically should be doing right now to further the agenda of protecting the unborn? I'll ask him one more time.
Let me say first what he shouldn't be doing, which is working with our Republican leadership to block House File 138, to bury it in committee and make sure that it never comes out even for debate, okay, while pushing more legislation that ends and then you can kill the baby. Okay, so we should deal with this in our laws, okay? The governor is the executive. He is supposed to execute our laws. I mean, let me be as specific as I can be for you, Tom. If I felt that I had the power and that it was my obligation in order to keep my own sacred oath to God, I would shut down every abortion clinic in this state if I thought I could do it.
Yeah, I could say if you had the legal right to do it.
I mean, you understand why I'm being careful about you know.
Understand your zeal. And you think, I'm going to put words in your mouth, you think that Branstad lacks the same level of zealousness that you possess for the sanctity of the unborn life. Am I stating that properly?
I would challenge you to go back and listen to his last 4 condition of the state speeches and see if he even mentioned the defense of life. You know, and I would also point out he had no problem with expending his political capital to push a bullying bill at the same time.
Which did get passed.
Sort of.
Well, it didn't get passed, did it?
No,
Yeah.
but I mean, they had different versions. But I'm saying that was one of his prime agendas.
Yeah.
Not defending life, not restoring respect for our law, which is one man, one woman on marriage.
And certainly overlooking personhood. Tom Hoefling is our guest. He's a candidate for governor here in Iowa. We'll come back right after this.
All across America, there are countless numbers of people struggling with addiction and other life-controlling issues. Probably someone you know and love. There is a way out. There is hope. Transformations Treatment Center in Delray Beach, Florida, has a unique approach to substance abuse treatment. Call now and ask about our Guaranteed Success program or log on to transformationstreatment.com. Transformations. Change your life. Change your relationships. Transform your world.
Get away from us, you neat old credit card. We don't have any more money. We're in trouble now. Save us! Somebody save us! Somebody help! Help! Save us!
Hi, I'm Tom Coates from Consumer Credit of Des Moines. If your credit card's a little too animated, give us a call.
Hooray! We're saved! Consumer Credit, you're our hero!
Yes, now your favorite programs on Webcast One Live can all be watched and listened to on any Android or Apple device. Your phone, tablet, or iPad. Yes, your favorite shows on Webcast One Live are available live or on podcast wherever you go. Let me introduce to you some of our great shows.
Shalom! Every week on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman, we'll talk about issues in the Middle East, issues related to the Jewish tradition and religious traditions in general, and keep you up to date on exactly what's going on around the world. You may know some of the story, but you haven't heard all of the story until you've heard it on Understanding the World with Rabbi David Kaufman and our special guests we have on every week.
Hey, this is Doc with Doc and Lefty. I want to tell you about our brand new time slot. It's from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. It's on the same night, Tuesdays. We now follow Ed Fallon and the Fallon Forum on webcast1live.com. I want to tell you a little bit about our show. Our show is focused on local, state, and national, and sometimes international politics. We like to keep people updated and informed. We also have very interesting guests. So please join us every Tuesday from 6:30 to 7:30 p.m. on webcast1live.com.
So when you want to watch your favorite Webcast One program, remember, there's an app for that. You know, there's an app for that.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
All right, it is a beautiful afternoon. We are just a few weeks away from the primaries for the state of Iowa. Probably one of the biggest political years for Iowa politics when it hasn't been a presidential race. I mean, we have a Senate seat open. We have a congressional seat open. We have two congressional seats open.
All four of the congressional seats, and we've got the governor's race now.
Right.
So it's a big year for Iowa, and typically, Mac, you know that the Democrats don't turn out very well in election years that aren't presidential. And so the opportunities are out there for the Republicans nationwide to make some pretty significant gains, especially given the lack of enthusiasm for our current occupant of 1600 Pennsylvania Street.
Tom Hoefling is our guest, and you may say, I've heard of his name. How do I know his name? Well, he wants to have governor in front of that name. He's earned it in his private world as far as his passion for politics and the conservative side of Iowa, but now he's asking for your vote. And Tom Coates and I always like to give everybody a voice who is running for office. I think, Tom, I think you and I could probably say over the last 8 or 9 years, I think we've given anybody that wants to come on a voice, including, remember the guy that ran for governor that was kind of strange, that was on the street corner all the time? Do you remember this?
That was Chet Culver.
Bing, bing. I'll give you that. All right. Anyway, Tom Hoefling is our guest today, and Tom, continue with your questions. I think you were going to ask about Common Core.
Yes, I'm going to come back to what you want to talk about before we explored the life issue, and that was Common Core. Common Core has been a point of contention not only in this state but across the country. Many of the conservatives are waking up and saying, what is this? Why is this being foisted upon us? The sad state of education in this country is alarming to many of us. It almost seems, Tom, like the dumbing down of our nation's young is intentional. Rather than incompetence, we start to blame intent because an ignorant population, an uninformed, and basically, even though they may have a 4-year college degree, an uneducated population is much more easily led by charlatans like Barack Obama than an educated one. Let's go into Common Core, and I want to get your position on it.
Well, it was one of the main things that drove me into this race. Back in November, when I was considering it, I saw that if I didn't get in the race, that no one else was going to, and that Governor Branstad was not going to be challenged on this. Now, he's running around telling people, or his staffers are at least, I've heard him many times, they're saying, well, he doesn't really support Common Core. Yes, he does. And it's going straight forward. It's being implemented. No matter how many smoke bombs they throw out and try and fool the naive and the ignorant into believing that he doesn't support it. It's going into effect. I call it the final blow against any scraps of local control that we had left. Now, Common Core was brought in surreptitiously. Even back in January when I started petitioning, maybe 1 in 100 people actually knew what Common Core was. We've made great strides in educating the public. I have not given an interview, given a speech, anything where I have not brought this up in the last 5 months. And it's not just me. Many others are out there, educating people on a daily basis. So, look, we've got to kill it. And I believe we are going to kill it as the public becomes aware of what it really is.
Tell us what it really is. Because a lot of the listeners, Tom, will not. I mean, they've heard of Common Core. They really don't know what it is and why it is so much held in disdain by you and other conservatives that have looked into it. Tell us what it is.
Well, certain Republican leaders who, have kind of been in bed for decades with the education establishment would have you believe that this was hatched by the states and all of that. Nothing could be further from the truth. This was hatched by the radical left, people who are signers to the Humanist Manifesto, okay? This comes out of the deep left, and this is about control. This is about control over our children, our families to the nth degree. So Common Core is insidious. It's overwhelming, and if we don't stop it, we're not going to have, any self-government left.
Is it an attempt to remove some of the vestige of the essence of what education is, or is it perhaps a tool that they can use to indoctrinate our children in areas of values that we don't share?
I think all of the above. It's a very comprehensive thing, and it's not happening in a vacuum. This is a process that's been going on for decades and decades. Terry Branstad supported forced consolidation back in the 80s. This has been going on. Come up to my town, Lorville, and you'll see the end result of all of this process. In our town, it's a demolition fence around our school. Okay, my daughter can't drive by the building. She went there when she was a kid, and she can't stand to see it. She cries. Okay, we're about ready to have a big gaping hole in the middle of our town.
It is a key part of a small community. Unfortunately, the slate of rural Iowa is one that we could explore. But let's go back to the Common Core issue and tell us. In the Common Core, are there areas, I've heard the math deficiencies. Tell us what you found that would take some of the education value away from our children.
Well, I try not, in the midst of a political campaign, to get down into the details of Common Core, and I'll just be honest.
An overview.
No, I tell people, look, go on the web, okay, Google Common Core. There's mountains of information. Here in Iowa, people like Shane Vanderhart, Caffeinated Thoughts, Stop Common Core. There's mountains of information about how this came about, what it is. Okay, I'm in a political campaign. My opponent supports it. He's in power. Okay, so my message is we must kill Common Core. Okay, so I'm trying to keep the focus there. And also, it's not enough to just say what you're against. Okay, you've got to say what you're for. It was the fact that I was a homeschool dad that got me into politics originally. I figured out that if you're a homeschooler, you're going to intersect with government, and you better get involved or they're going to squash you. So for 20 years, I've been out telling people what we need is TLC, true local control of our schools. It starts with the parents. God gave us the rights associated with parenthood, but also the duties. Okay, so it primarily rests on us, but also the church has always had a key role in education in this country. That needs to be restored. The local community has an interest. But as soon as you get past the local level, you're starting to get into the realm of bureaucracy. We've got to stop taking just as a practical matter, we have to stop taking our education dollars, sending it to Des Moines, sending it to D.C., having them run it through a big bureaucracy, and then sending a little bit back with strings attached. So I say TLC, true local control, as opposed to the lip service we've heard for decades about local control. You've got to get control of the money. You've got to reform your tax code to keep that money at home.
Mac, you have some questions or follow-up that you want to do there?
And if you don't agree with this as a listener, I'm okay with that. You're welcome to call in and tell me you disagree. But I'm a Glenn Beck fan. And he wrote a book on Common Core, and his name of the book was Conform. And a couple of the notes he says, did you know, for instance, that as part of the education curriculum, data points are set to be mined? Kyle Olson of the Education Action Group told Glenn Beck last week that these points include blood type, voting status of their parents, religious affiliation, and their income. Things that have nothing to do with children's education. Olson was a part of a group of parents, lawmakers, and concerned citizens who attended what was described as a national strategy session. Glenn Beck said the best way to explain what's going on with Common Core, it is kind of nebulous for a lot of people. They know what it is, but they can't define it. There's many key points to it. Common Core, if I understand it, is nothing more than the government's intrusion, further intrusion into our lives, and they're doing it with the cloak of education for our children.
Absolutely. Many of these programs you see Obamacare, a lot of these programs have to do with data collection. They say knowledge is power, and that is true. The more they learn about us, the more they can manipulate us. So Common Core certainly has that aspect, and it's also being tied in the states with labor policies, it's cradle to grave socialism is what it is.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, it is the beginning of the government knowing everything and anything about you. And, you know, I've been doing shows like this for 30 years, and I can remember saying, and we didn't know what it was called 10 years ago, 12 years ago, but I remember ranting on the slippery slope that was coming on the government mining data about our children, about our lives through our children, or through the driver's license. I think that's a good one. Well, you have to have a driver's license to drive. And now all of a sudden they have detectors hidden in cement under the car, under the street that you drive, that will actually pick up the barcode on your driver's license. People laughed about that 12, 14 years ago. Now, today, it happens in several states across the country.
You know, there's two parts to this. One is the ability, okay? We now have government that has the technological ability to do this far beyond the wildest dreams of the Soviets or Mao or anybody like that. They have the ability. The other part of it is political leaders who have the will to use that information against the people. Sadly, that's what we have in power in the White House right now, is people who've shown they've been using the instruments of government to abuse the people. So we've got to do two things. We've got to take away the ability to whatever extent we can, but more importantly, we've got to get people in public office who would never dream of who are actually for the people and of the people, who would never use those instruments against people, even if those instruments existed.
Yeah, and I want to let people know that there's an ad currently running on television, and I saw it last night, and it has 3 quote-unquote regular people who are teachers telling us that Common Core is okay, resist any bad things that are said about it. I'm a teacher, believe me. It's garbage.
You know,
it's absolute garbage. It's mind control. This is what I would call, what did Hitler call those boys in the little brown outfits?
That's the junior SS, you mean?
Junior SS. Is that what that was called? Where he'd take these boys out of public education and put them into what was quote unquote this extremely high-end education. And, oh, Tom, you should feel so lucky that your son is involved in this. Well, we know what happened. Yeah. 3 years later, they're taking over the world, and they're all brainwashed. And Common Core is nothing more than a Nazi.
And they did pick out the best and the brightest as best they could, because those were the leaders that they wanted to indoctrinate.
Yeah.
And this whole education system is designed that way, by the way.
Yeah, it is. But how are we ever going to stop it?
Well, again, we still have our freedom of speech. We're right here on the air right now. We still have, look, the founders of this country won our independence from Great Britain using handwritten letters delivered by men on horseback, broadsides printed on crude presses. We have cell phones, we have modems, we have free email, free conferencing ability, free web radio, all of these things. I've gotten to the point where I say, look, if we don't use these tools to take our government back into our own hands, it's not because we can, it's because we won't.
All right. It is the 14th day of May in the Lord's year 2014. It's a special edition on a Wednesday. Reich Places will be back next week with his substitute of The View from a Pew. Today it's a special edition with Tom Coates and a man who wants to be your governor in Iowa, Tom Hoefling. And we'll be back live here on KTIA Iowa.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
I'm Brian Leach, owner and general manager of Service Legends. I brought along a couple of the home comfort heroes.
Hi, I'm Tammy Wells.
I am Nick Wondershad.
I'm administrative manager.
I am the senior technician
from Service Legends.
It seems like every good thing, when you feel it to the bone that it's good, there's a lot of hard work put behind it. I don't think that you can fake it and have it turn out good.
If we seem like, okay, that's just weird, it's just a furnace, why would you believe so deeply in a furnace? It's not just that, we want to show the world that you can have good service.
Yeah, it's gotta be, it's your home.
It's built into our daily trainings, it's built into our culture, that we're gonna do whatever it takes to have each client say they love us, period.
That's why we spend all the hours in the training that we do. And if we guarantee it's gonna be a good experience for you, or else it's free, what type of work do you think we're gonna do?
There is a guarantee.
Temperature selection guarantee, fixed right or it's free guarantee, comfort guarantee, best value guarantee. All of these guarantees hold us accountable to ensuring that we exceed your expectations. And if for whatever reason we'd fail and we can't make it right, we guarantee all of those guarantees with a 100% money back guarantee.
If you don't think that your technician can fix it right, are you gonna say that to a client? No.
You don't have to worry about having a technician come to your house.
We drug test, background check all of our team members. We put safe people in your home. Each and every one of our service techs, 400 hours a year in training.
You tell it the minute they walk in the door. They know what they're doing, they've done their homework, and they actually truly care about what you want.
Because at the end of the day, you're the person that makes sure I have a job.
They're gonna be listening. They're gonna wanna know what your challenges are. Then they're gonna come and give you options, and you get to choose.
If I'm there to help and I make it easy and painless, I did my job right that day.
Well, when it comes to your comfort, safety, and your family, you don't necessarily go buy the most expensive, but you get the most bang for your buck.
Oh, it's worth it, because there's a lot of people that will find a way to get it to work right now and then leave and then come back, charge you again, and the cycle just repeats itself. So when I'm out there looking at the furnace, I want to find why it failed today. How can we change the part today with something that you're not going to have to worry about? Is it worth changing the part today? You can put a lot of money into a furnace. I can fix parts all day. There's good job security in that for me, but is it the right thing for you?
I get a lot of the phone calls of after the technicians are there. They're just in awe. They're like, wow, you guys are great. I don't even know what to say. You guys are great. Everything you did was perfect. It was great.
Keep going, though. I like this.
Just give us a try. I'm going to take all the risk.
I've got the time to make this right. I've got the support to make it right.
Just check us out.
And if you don't see the value in what we do,
I mean, fixed right or it's free or 100% money back.
enough said.
Welcome back. It's a special edition on this Wednesday, the 14th day of May in the Lord's year 2014. I'm J. Michael McCoy. For those of you that were tuning in for some fantastic conversation about gospel music, Reich Places is taking the week off. His lovely bride has been involved in some medical issues, nothing severe. She's home and resting fine, but I thought it was a good idea for Reich to take a couple days off and just focus on being a husband rather than a... he's still, Ryan, he's still nominated for, Gospel Music Radio Announcer of the Year. So we're very pleased to have him with us. All right, on this special edition of Max World Live on this Wednesday, the 14th, I also want to say happy birthday to my bride. This has been an interesting week. On Sunday, we celebrated our 23rd wedding anniversary. And thank you. And, of course, it was Mother's Day, which adds to that. And today is her birthday, and it ends with a 0. And then this weekend, we have tons of her family coming in from South Dakota. If you guys in Iowa see a wagon train that says "Go South Dakota" coming across Iowa, that'll be my wife's relatives, and they're all coming in for the weekend. And it'll be a great celebration for CJ, and she absolutely earns it, deserves it. Anyway, I can't say enough about my wife. You know that if you listen to me.
Well, today is my daughter Katie's birthday, too, so I'll say happy birthday to her as well.
How old is she?
She is 28.
Wow, and where does she live?
She lives in Lorville as well.
Right there with you.
She is a production manager at Farner Bakken down in Carroll.
Oh, my gosh. I'm very familiar with Farner Bakken. Yeah. I had restaurants for years, and we exclusively used Farner Bakken.
Well, she's done a great job there, and she's worked her way into management. And I also have a son and a son-in-law that are employed there as well.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you? I'm trying to think of the guy that I worked with for years, Brett. Yeah.
We'd have to ask her.
Tons of sales.
She knows everybody.
Yeah, Farner Bakken's a good organization. Not to give them a plug, but it is.
No, my wife just raves about how great it is to work with them. So.
Yeah. They were our exclusive food distributors. You know,
they might have to buy some advertising with you after this.
Well, a lot of restaurants play the game. And they move between Cisco and Martin Brothers and who's got the cheapest price on hamburger this week, who's got the cheapest price on French fries. And all you do is hurt a relationship rather than build one. Yeah. So we decided that we would go with one company. We interviewed them all, and it was well worth our time. Maybe we paid a little more in the long run, but the service we got
that's great.
Was outstanding compared to everybody else. So, all right, Tom Hoefling, that's the other voice that you hear this afternoon. Tom Coates is vacant from the seat for a little while, and Tom Hoefling and I are going to continue the conversation. Tom wants to be your governor. Yeah, like coming up is the primary, and you're going to have to choose. Now, you're primarying Governor Branstad.
Yeah, when folks go into the polling place on June 3rd in the Republican primary, there's going to be 2 names on the gubernatorial line, Terry Branstad and Tom Hoefling. That's it.
And, you know, if you unseat him, you have made history.
Well, especially since we're running a grassroots campaign. You know, he's got millions of dollars. He's the most powerful incumbent, the most successful politician in our state's history. No, it would be a huge upset, not just in Iowa. It would be a national upset.
Because if Governor Branstad should win the primary and then defeat his challenger, Jack Hatch, in the fall, he would become the only governor or the first governor in the history of the United States of America to serve 6 terms?
Yeah, I did the math a while back. At the end of this 5th term, he will have been governor for 11% of our state's history.
Wow.
And if he wins the 6th term, I think the math was 14% of our state's history since we became a state in the 1840s.
Well, and I'm a Branstad fan, I just have to tell you, but my love for Terry Branstad goes way back before he was ever governor. When he was an accountant, in Mills County, he was my father-in-law's accountant, and my father-in-law was a pastor, and so we really appreciated it.
Look, back in the 90s, I was on the Republican State Committee from the old 5th District. I marched in the Grand March at Terry Branstad's last inaugural in the 90s. I've known him for many years. This is not personal. This has to do with a set of principles that I hold and the public policies that I disagree with him on. I just don't believe that conservatives or their agenda are being forwarded by the current makeup of the Branstad operation.
And you're not alone. There are a lot of conservatives. Let's not go too far right, and let's not go too far left. I guess you'd call that the middle of the party.
I call it the Reagan mainstream of the Republican Party.
That are disappointed in what Branstad has failed to do and some of the things he's allowed the legislature to do. And, if all you do is subscribe to the Des Moines Register or you listen to Kevin Cooney at 6, 8, and 10, or 5, 8, and 5, 6, and 10, then all you know about the legislature are little bits and pieces. But for guys like you and I, who we're up nose high into politics in the state of Iowa, it has been a contentious last few years in the legislature. The administration, which is Republican, has not really done all they could do, at least in some people's opinion, to fight the Democratic push in the state of Iowa.
I don't believe they have. I think they've been an accommodationist on their best days.
Yeah. Now, what do you think about that bully bill that Branstad wanted to get through and it failed?
Look, you don't have to be a genius to know that the whole concept of these bullying bills, it's all a centerpiece of the left-wing agenda. Behind it is forcing us and forcing our children to accept homosexuality as a moral good. That's what's behind the whole concept of bullying bills. Look, and also, just in terms of nanny state socialist government, this is, again, government saying, we have the right to come in and manage your behavior, right down, and your children's behavior, okay? This is not American.
Well, and it blows the First Amendment out of the water.
It does. So look, why is our Republican governor pushing a centerpiece of the left-wing agenda? Why? I don't get it.
Why do you think it is?
Well, I think he's pandering to the left, and
is he trying to guarantee a re-election?
I have no idea if he thinks that's going to do it, but look, let's get the state out of government or out of education. That's what conservatives want. That is our agenda. Is to get the federal government, for starters, out. They have no constitutionally enumerated right to even be involved in education. And I think it's really questionable at the state level. People don't realize, like, 2/3 of our state budget is being poured into education.
Yeah.
It's a monstrosity.
And we're not doing very well.
We're not. We've been sinking like a rock.
Yeah.
And all we're doing really is creating more layers of bureaucracy. Again, back to my concept of TLC. Look, George Washington said, government is force. Government is not love. It's not care. No bureaucrat has ever educated any child.
Right. Well, and why don't people see it for what it is? Why can't they see the slippery slope and realize that this is the government's way of taking just an inch? Just another inch.
Let me tell you what I believe to be the number one reason why it is Republican leaders who don't let them know, or they're involved in it themselves.
Yeah,
I think that's the number one thing. I think if we had leaders, we have a leadership vacuum in the church. We have a leadership vacuum in conservative politics, in the pro-life movement. You can just go right on. We don't have leaders who will step up, tell the truth without fear or favor, and just let people know what's going on. In my campaign this year, I have been squelched by a lot of the gatekeepers. They just won't even let the people who are depending on them for information, they won't even let them know that I exist.
Do you think the political? We're going to take a break, and when we come back, if you don't mind this conversation, is this the way it was at the beginning? I mean, you and I've been on this earth 55 years. Been paying attention for, let's say, 45 of it.
53 for me.
Okay. Do you think this is the way it was in 1776, in 1821? Let's talk about that when we come back. Tom Hoefling is my guest. He wants to be your next governor. We'll continue this next live here on The View from a Pew on KTIA, Iowa.
From the RE/MAX Real Estate Concept Studios, this is Webcast One Live.
Hey, psst. Let me let you in on a little secret. You ready? Always try to do business with people, not places. Especially if you seek honest Christian business people. And when it comes to my car, I really need to trust who's working on it. Now, my family is so blessed. A few years ago, we found a family-owned automobile repair shop that operates as a Christian business also. Open, honest, reliable, trustworthy. It's AMCO on Hickman Road in front of Kmart. And it's a family-owned Christian operating business. This family treats your car as if it was their car. Everything from oil changes to transmission repair and everything in between. So the next time you feel the need to be at peace with your choice of who you can trust with your car, give AMCO on Hickman a chance to serve you. And tell them Max sent you.
All across America, there are countless numbers of people struggling with addiction and other life-controlling issues. Probably someone you know and love. There is a way out. There is hope. Transformations Treatment Center in Delray Beach, Florida, has a unique approach to substance abuse treatment. Call now and ask about our Guaranteed Success program or log on to transformationstreatment.com. Transformations. Change your life. Change your relationships. Transform your world.
We're back. Coming up on 4 o'clock, if you say, what's Mac doing on the radio? I want to hear Reich, I want to hear the gospel music. He'll be back. His wife is recovering, and, we're a family company, and there's nothing more important than family. Not a radio show, not a paycheck, not a going with the flow, being popular with the other side, finding middle ground, compromise, tolerance. I know that Jesus taught a lot of things, but I hate to tell you this, and if you differ with me, you're always welcome to email me, Facebook me, call me, grab me on the street or whatever. But you know what word doesn't exist in the Bible in any language? Tolerance. Now, everybody thinks as Christians that we have to be tolerant. No. We have to be loving, but we have to speak the truth. Ephesians 5:11 makes that very clear. Call out the darkness. Speak the truth. I have a good friend of mine, Frank. He's got a radio show here. And Frank said something that I thought was remarkable. You know, in the midst of the gay legislation, the gay push, the push to be to allow that sexual deviance to be acceptable on all levels, many Christians, including myself, feel pressure from time to time to just be quiet. You know, the other side is so militant that any peep out of us, we're now bigots and it's hate speech and it's just terrible what they say. And as Christians, since we know where we're going, it's not really a fight I need to fight. However, Frank says something brilliant, Tom. He says, if we don't continue to tell people what the Bible says about homosexuality, someday some child will say, well, what's wrong with it? It's normal. I see it all around me. I never hear anybody telling me that it's a sin or it's not God's will or it's against what the church believes. And he's got a good point. And in a way, that's kind of your passion. Let's get the truth out there.
That's the way I do politics.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm never shy about telling people, hey, I'm a Christian. The basis for my understanding is in my Bible. For example, again, on life, thou shalt not murder. Genesis chapter 9, if you shed innocent blood, by men shall your blood be shed.
Yeah.
Be fruitful and multiply. That's the basis for my politics. But I can make an argument based on Scripture. I can make an argument based on common morality, on the Constitution, okay, on the law, and on politics. And I can win that fight and that argument on these things on any of those bases.
As we went into the break, we were talking a little bit about history. Do you think that someday, it'll be long after you and I are dead, but do you think someday, do you think Ryan's children will look back in the history books and said, look at that genocide they did from 1971 to, let's hope it's 2014 or 15, and they called it abortion and it was legal? I mean, what's the difference? And I'm serious. What's the difference between that and what Hitler did to the Jews?
There is no.
Or what's going on in the Congo?
There is no moral difference, except you just don't have open mass graves. So you've got Stericycle burning them up and sending them up the chimneys like at Auschwitz. So there is no moral difference. You have innocent human beings being murdered under the color of law.
You know what I always thought? And you're a politician, so for heaven's sakes, don't adopt this, because I don't think it's workable. How about this? I always tell people I'm pro-choice. I think that women and men have a choice of whether they're going to have unprotected sex or they're going to take the chance that their protected sex might produce a child in which they have to be responsible for. So why don't we do this? Why don't we have abortion clinics that are run by the government? And if you go in to get an abortion, you're charged with manslaughter. You want to get rid of that child? Okay, fine. Get rid of it. But there's a consequence. And that consequence is what the Bible says, and that's murder. That is premeditated murder. And you're going to pay a price for that.
The only problem I'd have with your argument, well, I have a few problems I'd have with it, but it's not manslaughter in that case. It's first-degree premeditated murder.
You're right. You're exactly right. You're exactly right. Because I'm a unique case, and you don't know this about me, but I was conceived in the fall of 1958 by a college freshman and a college professor. And when my biological grandmother found out that my biological mother was expecting, this is old school days, Tom. You remember those. She was whisked off to a home for unwed mothers.
Right.
And the moment I was born, I was put into an orphanage, and there was no record. I was baby bastard.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
My story's similar, not exactly, but my sister was born in 1958, and my mom got very sick right after that with postpartum depression, which led to mental problems. I was conceived, I guess, in between trips to the hospital. And when I was born in 1960 in Omaha, I was whisked off to aunts and uncles' houses. So, look, if it had been a decade later, I have no doubt I would have been aborted.
Yeah.
My mom was raped in the hospital in 1965, and became pregnant. I didn't know this until I was an adult. I didn't know that my half-sister existed. But I have no doubt that child would have died. She's a wonderful Christian lady. She was brought up by an adoptive family out in Nebraska. She has 3 beautiful children and a grandson. One of her daughters has served in the U.S. Air Force. I mean, that's what people don't realize. When you blot out that child, you're not just destroying that child, which is bad enough. You're destroying a whole bloodline. You're destroying posterity. When our U.S. Constitution states as its ultimate purpose to secure the blessings of liberty to our posterity.
Yeah. Well, and I found my biological mother.
That's great.
And she told me, Mac, the truth of the matter was, if Roe versus Wade had been law in 1958,
you wouldn't be here.
You wouldn't be here.
Yeah.
Therefore, my children wouldn't be here, and my grandchildren wouldn't be here.
Right.
You wouldn't have an opportunity to sit here and say your way, and Tom Coates wouldn't have a voice. And
again,
it's God's will.
Look, we can win this fight. We can stop abortion. I really believe it. And let me tell you why. When I was petitioning, I ran into this young lady, And I asked her to sign my petition, and she immediately signed it because she couldn't stand Terry Branstad, frankly. But then we had a conversation, and she said, "Oh no, I'm pro-choice." You know, she was a liberal Democrat. And at one point in the conversation, I looked at her and I said, "Look, if I get elected governor, do you want me to protect your rights?" And then I just shut up, and she looked at me and she said, "Of course." I said, "Well, that little person over there, I have is the same obligation to protect their rights." And she looked at me, and she got this thoughtful look on her face, and then she pointed her finger at me and she said, "Touche." And that was the end of the conversation.
Good.
Look, there's only two moral, constitutional, and legal arguments against abortion: God-given unalienable rights and equal protection under the law. These bills I was talking about earlier that end with "and then you can kill the baby," right up front, they sacrifice the only two arguments against abortion and they throw it away.
Absolutely. Tom, good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
June 3rd.
June 3rd, just a couple weeks away. Tom Hoefling for governor. And you're welcome here on this program, whether you're governor or whether you're just a crazy activist like me.
Okay.
Say your prayers for Reich and his family. We'll see you tomorrow. And until then, just do one favor for me, would you? Please? Just one. Just pray.